There is a moment that happens more often than most people expect, where someone sitting in a comfortable apartment, driving a relatively new car, wearing clothes that signal a certain kind of success, opens their banking app and feels a quiet, creeping dread. The number on the screen does not match the life around them. They earn more than their parents ever did, more than most people in the world earn, and yet the account is nearly empty 2 weeks before the next deposit arrives. This is not a story about irresponsibility. It is a story about a system that expands to fill whatever space it is given, and about the psychological mechanisms that make that expansion feel not just reasonable, but necessary. The phenomenon has a name in behavioral economics. It is called lifestyle inflation, and it operates with a kind of elegant invisibility. When income rises, spending tends to rise at nearly the same rate, not because people are reckless, but because every new income level comes with a new social context, new peer comparisons, new expectations about what a person at that level is supposed to own, live in, drive, and do on weekends. The raise that felt like freedom on the day it arrived quietly becomes the baseline from which the next round of dissatisfaction grows, and the cycle restarts with a higher number attached to it but the same emotional architecture underneath. What makes this paradox mathematically interesting is that the gap between income and wealth is not just possible at 6 figures, it is structurally predictable. A household earning $120,000 annually, after federal and state taxes, Social Security, and Medicare deductions, may take home somewhere between $75,000 and $85,000 depending on location. If that household lives in a major metropolitan area, which is statistically where higher income jobs tend to concentrate, housing alone can consume 30 to 40% of net income. Add transportation, food, childcare if applicable, student loan payments which follow higher education like a long shadow, and the discretionary margin begins to look less like wealth and more like a narrow ledge. The income is real. The financial fragility is equally real. Both exist simultaneously, and the space between them is where the paradox lives. The deeper psychological layer is what researchers sometimes call the hedonic treadmill, the observed tendency for human beings to return to a relatively stable level of satisfaction regardless of changes in their circumstances. A salary increase produces a genuine improvement in mood and sense of security, but that improvement has a half-life, and within months the new income level feels normal, expected, and no longer sufficient. The brain does not experience $100,000 the same way it did when earning $60,000, because the reference point has shifted entirely. This is not weakness or ingratitude, it is a documented feature of how the human reward system processes relative rather than absolute conditions, and understanding it as a system rather than a character flaw changes the way one can respond to it. The exit from this pattern does not come from earning more, because the data consistently shows that earning more without changing the underlying architecture simply scales the problem. It comes from treating the gap between income and spending as a system to be designed rather than a feeling to be managed, from automating the distance between a paycheck arriving and money becoming available to spend, and from understanding that financial stability at any income level is primarily a function of margin, not magnitude.